Hello, I'm Kindson the Tech Pro, and today's class will be Introduction to Servers. The word server is very common. All of us use it from time to time. But what really is a server? Even persons in the IT world, they use the word server. But then, what are the various kinds of server? Because some might think that a server is a server, but it's not that way. There are different kinds of servers we are going to discuss today. About 8 of them we are going to discuss in this class. And we're also going to see how they work, and then we'll spend some time to work on the system to connect to the server to see exactly how we can work with servers today. So let me get some things ready, and then we dive deep into the course. Alright, let's talk about the client-server architecture. Way back in time, in the time of early days of network, people think of how to connect computers together. If you connect two computers together, they'll be able to communicate. You've created a network. It means that one computer shares information with the other computer. If you connect the third one, the same thing, they're able to share network among themselves. But then the one that is situation whereby we have a central system that has all the information, and then every other system can access the information in that system. So the central system that actually contains the real information that the users need is referred to as a server, and is in a central location, whereas the clients are the systems that connect to the server to access the information. So how do we define a server? A server is either a software or a hardware, or a combination of software and hardware that provides information or other services to other computers. So that is how the client-server architecture works. When you are in the office, accessing your email, browsing the internet, your information is coming from somewhere, and when you upload, the information is actually going to somewhere. That is called the server. A server normally resides in a data center. A data center contains data normally stored in several large servers. So a server or servers, they are very, very important. That actually holds the information of the company, the information of the enterprise, the information of the state. They all reside in the server, and the server is normally highly secured. And every other system that connects to this server or to the servers through the network, they are called clients. Way back in time, we have this concept of thin clients. It's even in use today. There's computers that doesn't have any processor or processing strength. They rely on the server to be able to get the information. The applications are installed in the server. They have to connect to the server to be able to use applications like Microsoft Word and so on. We get to that in a minute. So that is about client-server architecture. So let's now discuss the various kinds of server in use today. Here, the first one we are going to discuss is the web server. It's a web server. That is the first server we are going to discuss. Why I choose it as the first one is that it appears to be the most common server that everybody knows. So anytime you surf the internet, a web server comes into play. What is a web server? A web server is a machine that serves web pages to the client. So when you type www.google.com and then you enter kttpro.com, or maybe Kindson the Tech Pro in the search box and hit search, it actually goes into Google servers to pull out this information and then present it right there to you. It may not just be Google servers, it may also search other servers around the world to be able to present this information to you. I would like to let you know a little how web servers work. Now, web servers work by listening to requests for information, right? Web servers actively or continuously listen to information coming from the internet. We'll talk about ports later on, but web servers listen to information on different ports. Most common is HTTP. HTTP is a protocol, but that is port 8080. But I'm not going into this. Is to keep the class very simple. The point we are making is web server actively listens for requests for web pages, and if it gets a request, it processes the page, gets the information, load it into the page, and send across to the browser. So what we have something like this: web server, and then we have browsers here. It may be Internet Explorer, it may be Google Chrome, it may be Firefox. Let's say IE. It requests for information, okay, and then the web server sends back the information right back. Example of web servers are Apache Server. Apache Server is also very common. We also have IIS, that is Internet Information Service. Internet Information Service. IIS, those are the kinds of server, the various examples of servers we have today. We have Apache. We have other ones I can't remember for now, but those are the two most common servers normally in use. I think I've come across something like Glassfish, and so on and so forth. So web server listens to requests for web pages and serves the web pages. Normally the format of data served by a web server is HTML pages, HTML pages, okay? Sometimes we may have pages like ASPX. We may also have JSP. We may have PHP. We may have something like Cold Fusion Markup, CFML. These are formats of data or pages that can be served by a web server. So each time you are browsing the internet, look at the extension and you'll be seeing that the extension is any of these. It may also be ASP. I think these are the ones that are very common. So most times you look at the extension of your web pages and you see all of this. This HTML is a static page. All of this is dynamic. I will explain why they are dynamic in a minute. So a web server serves web pages across the internet, and normally a web server uses the HTTP protocol, Hypertext Transport Protocol. That is the protocol that the web server uses to send information and also receive information from the client. Alright, I think we've gotten enough of the web server. Let's now move to something else. Alright, so we are now discussing DHCP. DHCP Server, that is the next one we are going to discuss. DHCP. DHCP means Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol. Why do we need this server? What is the importance of DHCP server? First, take note that computers on a network have addresses. For you to be able to reach any computer on the network, you need the address. For you to assign the address, you have to do it either manually or automatically. Think of a network in your house. Like in my house, you may have a network of my TV, my laptop, and my desktop. These three systems, I can easily go to them and assign IP addresses to them. IP means Internet Protocol. But what if you have 100 computers, 1,000 computers, a network of several thousands of computers? How do you assign addresses to them? That is the problem. We should have a way to automatically assign addresses to computers on a network. And that is why we have DHCP server. And I say DHCP means dynamic host configuration protocol. So what it means is that computers on the network are referred to as hosts. The hosts are the computers on the network. So if you plug in a computer to the network, the DHCP server recognizes that you've plugged in a computer on the network, and it automatically configures it, assigns it an IP address, a subnet mask, and a default gateway for it to be able to communicate on the network. So DHCP server is used to automatically configure computers on the network and assign them necessary IP address. So anytime you see computers connecting your laptop to a cyber cafe and automatically you start browsing, take note that the DHCP server on the network have automatically assigned it an IP address, and that is why you're able to use it on the network. So that is how DHCP works. Sometimes the DHCP server is also included in some switches and routers. It means that you may not need a big computer to place somewhere in a data center with several gigs of hard disk space and several gigs of RAM for you to have a DHCP in a small switch. And an 8-port switch, 16-port switch, 24-port switch. Sometimes they have DHCP server in them, and they're able to configure computers connected to them automatically. That is how DHCP servers work. Let's now look at something else. Alright, so the next one we are going to discuss is Exchange Server. Exchange Server is very, very important because Exchange Server holds your emails. I think that is a simple definition. Exchange Server is used to hold your emails. When you send an email from your system to another system or to a recipient, let's say from clientserver@kttpro.com, I'm sending an email to oleander@kttpro.com. That email does not go directly from me to Oleander. It goes first to the server. From the server will now determine the destination email address and forward it to that particular user. Sometimes the server will check to make sure that this user is actually existing, and if the user doesn't exist, the server will send the email, will keep it for some time and send the notification back to you that such a recipient does not exist. That is why even if you send an email to a wrong recipient and mistype the email address, the email will still go. It will still tell you sent, but then the server will then determine whether that recipient is existing or not. The server is called the Exchange Server. All right, let's write it down. A second. That server is called the Mail Exchange. The Mail Exchange Server. Just like you have telephone exchange for routing your call from you, it comes to that exchange and then routes to the user. Exactly the same thing happens. You send an email, it gets to the exchange, and then it routes to the final user. That is the work of the Exchange Server. We have Exchange Server for Microsoft. We have Exchange Server 2003, 2008, 2012. That is how it is. Now we also have Exchange Server being able to route messages sent from mobile phones to email addresses. I think that is implemented in Microsoft Exchange Server 2008. It's called Active Sync. The Active Sync feature and the mobile feature helps you to configure your email or mobile device to be able to send an email from mobile device like Samsung or Nokia, and also be able to send a text message and SMS straight to an email address. So you'll be able to type an SMS on your phone and send it to an email address, and it gets to the Exchange Server. Exchange Server will determine this is a text message and it's going to an email address. It will put it in a mail and then route it to that email address. So that is why Exchange Server is very important. Think of when there is no Exchange Server, your emails might be getting lost. Your emails might not even be delivered, or if the user is not found, the email is not going to be delivered. So Exchange Server is a key thing that handles your emails. And the Exchange Server actually links to your Active Directory. This class we are not talking about Active Directory, but think of Exchange Server as the mail exchange, the central mail exchange that routes your mails from one point to the other. Alright, the next one we are going to discuss is Application Server. A very important Application Server. I like to call it App Server. What does it mean? What does Application Server do? Application Server handles dynamic pages. Application Server is used to process dynamic pages. Before now, we are saying that Web Server processes web pages. But when the page is a dynamic page, the Web Server is going to pass it on to an Application Server. So, if there is no Application Server, it means how do we handle dynamic pages? The work of the Application Server is to process dynamic pages. What is a dynamic page? A dynamic page is a page that contains markup in some programming language. A page that contains markup in some programming language. Let me give an example. A pure HTML page is not a dynamic page. It's a static page that can even be rendered in your browser. But when it comes to a dynamic page that contains a markup, for instance, we have PHP, and then we have some text, and then we have, alright, so what you see here is a markup on a PHP language. This actually can be inside HTML, can be enclosed completely inside a HTML page. Okay, so if you have a page like this, it's called a dynamic page. It may also be a different language other than PHP. It may be JSP, it may be Cold Fusion, it may be maybe ASP or something, some other programming language. So when the page contains markup like this, then The web server will not handle it. The application server will handle this. So the work of the application server is to handle dynamic pages or to process dynamic pages. Okay? I hope that is very clear. Alright, let's now go to database servers. Database servers. Before I treat database servers, take note that application server communicates with the web server, and also, so we may have a web server communicating with the application server, because if the page contains a dynamic page, the web server is going to pass it straight to the application server. Application server will check the markup, remove the markup, and replace it with pure HTML and send back to the web server, because the web server only understands pure HTML pages, and then it can be sent back to the browser. But now, if the markup contains access to the database, for instance, the markup contains database queries. I'm not going to give an example, but if the page contains codes that will request access to the database, then the application server is going to forward it all the way to the database server. I'll represent the database server in this way. Database server. Okay, so the database server will now, between the application server and the database server, there is a little software here called driver. This driver will adapt to a particular database, whether Oracle or whether SQL, whether MySQL, PostgreSQL, and so on. So that is how the web server communicates with the application server and with the database server. But now we are discussing the database server. So let's go ahead to discuss the database server. A database server holds your database. Databases are stored in a database server. I've discussed database before. A database is simply a collection of tables that are related and that is very much secure. Today there are database management systems that are used to handle database. But the point is, databases reside in the database server. For instance, we can have Microsoft SQL Server is a database server. For you to be able to view a database in the server, you need an application, let's say some kind of application for you to pull this data and be able to see it. For Oracle, we have SQL Developer. For Microsoft SQL Server, we have a SQL Server Management Studio. For MySQL, we have a MySQL Manager, and so on. So we have different applications you can use actually to manage your database, but those applications are not the database. The database resides right there in the server. So a database server is used to hold your database. Examples of database server I've mentioned, like Oracle, MySQL Server, PostgreSQL Server, Access, Microsoft Access Server. All these are database servers. Without database server, handling data will be somehow very difficult. Maybe you store it in files or something, but database server provides the security, the consistency, and the feature for multiple access of your data from millions of users or even more around the world. Alright, so let's now discuss our visual server. Let me clean up this. Sorry, cloud. Okay, let's discuss visual server. What is a visual server? A visual server is a server that handles virtual machines. Am I getting it right? Yeah. A visual server is a server that resides on a virtual machine. Let me try to explain it this way. Normally we have big computers that are maybe 2 terabytes and 32 GB of RAM. Very, very big computers that are the servers. Okay? But a virtual server is a server that is not residing on its own hardware. It's a virtual server is a virtual server that is created on a layer above the hardware. So you can have, on a single machine, you can have 5 servers running, and then they are virtual servers. So let me just give a diagram to help you understand how it works. Let's assume that we have this as the machine. Okay, so this is a very big machine, a HP ProLand server hardware, maybe 4 terabytes of hard disk and then 32 GB of RAM. Now this is a physical server. Okay, now you can actually make out a number of servers from here. Let's say you have this one to be, we have a hard disk and RAM. Hard disk and RAM. Hard disk and RAM. Okay, and processor and processor. Okay, so now these are servers, but they are not real physical servers. They are virtual servers. But a user somewhere here will be seeing them as if they are physical servers. So how does it work? It works that there is an application that is installed on top of the hardware. Okay. EXSI, that is the application. I think is by Microsoft, and then it gives you option to create to now install a different application, VMware or some other application that can help you to create visual server. So you can now, from here, you can create visual server. You can now allot memory. You can allot maybe 4 gig. So in one single machine, you can have about 8 servers that are running. So those servers are not physical servers. They are virtual server managed by some layer here that is a virtual machine. So that is how visual servers work. In fact, most data centers are reducing in hardware size by use of visual servers. So instead of using several servers of occupying so much space, you can actually create visual servers. There is a certification on VMware to actually, it has to do with understanding and managing visual servers. Alright, that is about visual servers. Alright, the next thing we are going to discuss is the DNS server. The DNS server. The DNS server is called domain name service. The DNS server, that is the domain name service. What does it mean? Is defined as a server that resolves fully qualified domain name to IP addresses. So what it means is that, let me paint a picture now for you. That we know that addresses of computers are IP addresses like 10.120.1.221. Okay, something like this. This is the address on the computer, and this is the address the computer uses to communicate with each other. But nobody actually remembers all this. Nobody memorize all these IP addresses. For instance, we may have names. For instance, we have kttpro.com. That is the name of the domain. But that domain that I got when I registered my domain name also maps to an IP address. So we have this kttpro.com might actually map to 192.0.120.0. Okay. Or 10.120.20.4. Alright, so when I registered this with HostGator, I got this IP address. This IP address is actually maps to this and vice versa. So when you go to the browser and type www.kttpro.com, an internet DNS and your web host will take the name, that's .com name, the kttpro, and then look it up in the table, in a table called DNS records, and then it will search out the IP address and then send it to the internet, and you'll be able to search out this particular website. So I think it is very simple to understand. DNS maps IP addresses, fully qualified domain names to IP addresses. So kttpro.com maps to an IP address in certain record, and the DNS will actually resolve it. So anything you type in the address bar, the DNS will look up to find out which IP address does it correspond to. So that is how domain name servers work. For instance, we may have computer names on a local network. We may have printer names. All these are mapped to IP addresses, and the DNS handles this mapping. The DNS actually saves a whole lot of work, makes life a little easier for us, and that is why I like it very much. It's really good. Let's now look at the last one, and that is cloud servers. Cloud servers, okay? Cloud servers are just what they are. They are servers in the cloud. But the question is, are there some servers in the cloud? You're looking up in the sky and there are some servers. There is nothing like servers in the cloud. In fact, the term cloud computing is very confusing. There is nothing up there in the cloud. There's nothing. All your data resides in the server. Good. So when we say cloud computing, it's like data is floating around in the sky, but no way. The data is in the server. Why we the term cloud computing is because the location of your data might actually not be known to you. You may be working from here in Nigeria and your data might be in California, in the data center in Johannesburg, in Lisbon, or wherever your data is. You don't really know, you don't really have control over where this data is, and therefore they formed that name, a really funny name, and called it cloud computing. So when a server holds your data and you don't even know where the data is located, you refer to it as cloud computers, cloud servers. So when you have something like Microsoft Azure, Microsoft I think is Z. So Microsoft Azure, this is one big term in Microsoft, moving your data straight to the cloud, but your data is actually in Microsoft data center, in one big computer, one big hard drive somewhere, not in the cloud. But since you don't know where it is, you don't have control over the location, the actual location of your data is referred to as cloud. And also you can get this data from any location you are. It looks as if you look up to the sky and you have your data back. So cloud servers are servers in the cloud, in a location that you don't know. It may even be replicated in several locations and accessible to you from anywhere, from any device with the right permissions. So we also have Microsoft Office 365. The same with Exchange. We also have Office 365 is a cloud server by Microsoft, Cloud Exchange Server, because you can actually have all these servers we've discussed before, but now in the cloud, in a location that you don't know. So this is how servers work. We've discussed about 8 of them. Remember, we started with web server, we discussed DHCP server, we discussed application server, we discussed database server, we discussed DNS server, we discussed virtual server, and now we discuss cloud server. I hope you've been following along in my presentation. If it's a little confusing, I'm too fast, maybe pause the video and try to follow along. Maybe leave a comment for me and tell me if you want me to improve on this video. For sure, I will respond to you. I might do something. For sure, my focus is for everybody to learn, for everybody to understand what I'm teaching. So thank you for joining me in discussing cloud, in discussing web servers. Let's now take some final thoughts. Alright, so cloud servers was the last thing we discussed, and that is servers on the cloud. Servers are very, very important. In modern computing, we can't do without servers. Our information is stored in the server, your emails, almost everything about your data, enterprise data or your social data, they're stored right there in the cloud. So servers, the future of servers today is actually right there in the cloud, and that is why we have several organizations having data centers in the cloud, like infrastructure as a service, their platform as a service, etc., that I'm going to discuss after now. So it's been interesting being with you. Subscribe to my channel if this has been informative for you. Like the video if it's helped you to understand servers. I remain kind on the Tech Pro, and watch out for my next presentation.